Hello everyone, how's it going? Dr. Incompetent here, and I'd like to do an early review of Manor Lords, shall we? So, Manor Lords is a game that is currently in early access, so the review, of course, will be based on this state of the game here in mid-May of 2024. On Steam, Manor Lords is described as a medieval strategy game featuring in-depth city building, large-scale tactical battles, and complex economic and social simulations. Rule your lands as a medieval lord, the seasons pass, the weather changes, and cities rise and fall. The user-defined tags are strategy, city builder, simulation, and base building. And I think that does a really good job encapsulating what this experience is. Now, I'll tell you, based on my play of 2 save files so far, what I've noticed about the game is they really emphasize the battles, but those don't happen very often early, and you don't get into large-scale battles until much later. The battles that I've had, were not super challenging, and as long as I had numbers, I was okay. But granted, that's based on my experience playing the game, and I'm only have about 10 hours into Manor Lords, so maybe if you get much, much further, then the battles become, more intense. But for me, most of the experience of Manor Lords is zoning and building your city, then managing your citizens' life and their labor, and eventually trying to expand into regions that you acquire via influence. So, given all that, given what this game is, it kind of feels like, a cities skylines type builder, yet in medieval Europe. And then also, on top of that, it has real-time combat with mercenaries and units that you create and outfit and give commands to, like an RTS, but, not as demanding as, traditional RTS. Almost kind of like more, Mountain Blade style a bit with it, except you're not riding on a horse or doing anything on your end. It's just kind of they're going on their own. So the first thing I want to talk about in a review is the game fun? Like, okay, so you're building a city from just the very start, and you're watching the city kind of grow and evolve as you meet the needs of your citizens and develop trade and industries and grow food and, make shoes and all kinds of fun stuff. But is it fun to do that? And in my experience, yes, Manor Lords is amazingly fun. I find myself wanting to play this game all the time, and it's due to a combination of the fact that this is just probably the most detailed-looking medieval simulator that I've played of this type, of a builder type. The graphics are incredible, and the intricacies of the different houses that are built, watching people just go to and fro doing labor, it's so immersive and interesting that I have fun just watching it happen. And I think that is a real testament to the game. Sometimes you get into it and, again, this is a symptom of it being early access. You wish there were perhaps more controls, more transparency with some of what's going on, in terms of behind the scenes and the numbers and stuff. But just as a spectacle, it's a lot of fun to watch your city grow and evolve over time. So yes, Manor Lords is a lot of fun. And what about the control in Manor Lords? Okay, so it's asking you to build, it's asking you to manage your citizens and the labor, it's asking you to control armies. How does this game control? So for the most part, Manor Lords controls really well. Zoning the houses and building the burgage plots for people to live is a little bit wonky at first, but once you get the hang of it and understand like how to increase or decrease the amount of houses that are being built on the zone, and some of the other stuff about, locating and positioning strategically your buildings, the controls work out just fine. It's pretty generous with letting you move certain buildings and, build roads and stuff like that. So I never had any problems using the mouse and the WASD to control the game at all. Even controlling combat, which I am not a person who's good at RTS games, so I was almost put off from Manor Lords because like, I don't know about RTS. Like, I don't want to do that. But it was fine. Like, it wasn't anything that was crazy where I was having to, have all of these like clicks per minute that I could do to just like absolutely maximize everything. You could pause the game, you can move things around, and it just is fine. So for my money, the controls in the game for what you're doing, which is building, managing, and controlling for an army, seem fine, no problem. But what about a subset of those controls, the systems and the UI? This is kind of where Manor Lords shows that it's still in early access, in my opinion. A lot of the systems are really good. A lot of the things are really interesting, how they happen, and work just fine, and it's amazing how much depth there is already, given the fact that it's in early access. But to be honest, there's a lot of time that this needs to still be in the oven. Like, this needs to keep cooking, baking, whatever, kind of cooking metaphor you want to use here, because there's a lot of fine-tuning that needs to happen with some of the systems. The logistical systems don't quite make sense, or at least it's not always clear, like why people are doing certain things, how to optimize systems, and you're going to be micromanaging your people a ton because you just don't have the built-in control that I would expect or want in a game like this. Like, in RimWorld, which is another management game, you can assign bills and tell people, okay, I only want you to build, for example, 25 shields. Like, just build 25 shields and then stop. And so then you could kind of set it and forget it. In this, you don't really have that option. You need to like be keeping your eye on everything that people are doing and then being like, oh, wait, actually, you need to go. There's nobody doing labor here. All of the flour is done. Like, so you need to move out of here, or the fields are done. So you need to stop working over here, or, I've got too many of these. Go do this or whatever like that. So I'm constantly kind of like looking at the game and the systems and the places of labor and how many I have of each resource to maximize by moving citizens around and families around to work in different places. And that's okay, but there should be some elements that allow you to control that more easily and some transparency with the numbers of things. Like, so the farming system is interesting, but so far it's not quite clear why the yield is a certain percentage, and like it's not always clear how many of each crop I'm actually going to get, and why I would want to plant at what time, and there just needs to be some cleaning up on some of the systems. So the building works fine, the assigning of labor is fine, but it's a lot of micromanagement, and the farming I'm still not like entirely convinced on, and that's probably too just a balancing thing. Like, the vegetable patches and the orchards seem to far outproduce a big field that you make of wheat, for example. So I don't really feel as incentivized to do some of those things versus just having people have a little vegetable patch in the back of their house or whatever. But at the same time, these things, again, I mean, I'm not slamming it. It's early access. There's rough edges. There's rough spots. There's smoothing and balancing that needs to be done. It's just worth pointing out that if you're going to purchase the game in its current state, this is kind of where we're at. And overall, I think the systems show a lot of promise, but there are some that aren't even implemented at all and need to be done more fully. The development system is not quite done. Trading between your settlements and trading at all, just the way that trading works in the game it sort of makes sense, but it sort of doesn't. Like, I wish it was very clear. I could see my ledger. I could see how much I was buying and how much I was selling, things like that. Sometimes you'll just see money appear or disappear, like there'll be a plus or a minus, but you're not really sure, like, okay, well, what did we just buy? Or what did we just sell? Or, things that I would just like to take a look at more closely, at least me personally. And that kind of leads into the UI itself. The UI for the game is good, but it needs some work with, again, just more windows and more ways to see statistics and information in the game. For example, if you're thinking about, like, okay, you can hold tab to see the different labor, like who's assigned where, like how many workers there are, or who's living where, and there are some icons, and it gives you some good information, but it's not always clear, like, okay, wait, where's my blacksmith again? Where's my joinery? And, what specialization is this building? So I wish those were more clearly marked, and I wish even the buildings themselves were more clearly marked with like a name that would pop up with the UI, so I could see, oh, okay, that's my logging camp, or that's where my woodcutter is. They're visually distinct, don't get me wrong, like you can see at a glance if you're looking, but sometimes I'll be like trying to find something and it's not always the easiest to locate where these things are. I wish when I held tab to give more tooltip information or just the overlay information, I wish that had a little bit more robustness to it. Also, the trade system, like I said, I would love there to be some kind of way for me to see what exactly in terms of numbers is being bought and sold, and have a more input on, delivering goods or figuring out, the prices and the flows and why nobody is buying, this, and I have a bunch of it, but it's not being sold, stuff like that. Also, I think it would be cool if you had a screen that just showed your labor, like overall, and what you had of each thing, and you could just, move and assign the labor from a window if you wanted to, instead of going around to the different buildings and checking that way. And again, these are just like wishes and things that are just maybe only I want, but these are kind of features that you would expect, especially as your settlement starts to grow and you're managing much, much bigger places. It becomes a lot of more hard work. And so this is just an area where the game is going to grow, obviously. So what about the story in Manor Lords? There really isn't a story. You make your own story. There's a kind of brief overview that guides what you're supposed to be doing to get a domination victory, but that's probably something that they're going to add to the game more as things develop, which would be personalities for the AI, objectives, lore, story, stuff like that. Right now, that doesn't exist, but, that's not a huge deal. There's not like there's a story really to SimCity. You just build and have fun. So not a necessary component, but maybe that gets added later. So then what about the graphics and the visuals of Manor Lords? This is something that people have talked about, and for good reason. This game is stunningly beautiful. It's one of the best builders I've ever seen, and it has some really, really amazing details, textures, effects that just make this such a visually pleasing game. It's a huge reason why you play it, and it's honestly, like, I know it sounds kind of superficial, but it's an amazing reason to play like an Eno game or something. If it looks good and you're chilling, vibing out, playing it, and just marveling at the spectacle of how cool your place looks and the people look, and it's just a great way to spend some time. It's not like graphics make or break a game necessarily, but they're definitely one of the best things about Manor Lords are the graphics, and that just gives you fantastic foundation from which to build from. The underlying systems themselves, yes, I've mentioned that there are some holes, but overall it's strong, it's sound, and the visuals are just one of the things that keep me coming back, because I just can't believe how good it looks to see an army walk by, to see a building get constructed, to see an oxen, pulling a log or whatever. All of this stuff just looks so good in the game, and it is a huge selling point for me. What about the audio in Manor Lords? I think the music is good. I think that there are some tracks that certainly stand out immediately. I think it's got great music that's very appropriate for the genre and for the time period that feels immersive, so that's good. The sound effects are also good. So I think the audio is very well done in Manor Lords. So how does it all come together, though? Like if you bring these systems and these elements together, does Manor Lords have a sense of style that says this is a unique individual experience? This game feels like it has a soul, or is it just like, a pretty movie to watch, but it doesn't have any substance and there's nothing to it that's unique or individual? For me, Manor Lords definitely feels like it has a sense of style. I don't recall a builder that I've played that has this level of depth and interest, that's a fantasy builder that also combines these like large scale kind of RTS battles, and really that's such a slow burn. I mean, it's amazing how much time it actually takes, unless you're playing on 32 times speed or whatever, like the fastest speed the entire time, to actually get established, get settled, and be able to claim another region. And then you build that city up and you start establishing trade and taking advantage of that region and then kind of span out. And that is when the game really hits its stride. When you feel like, okay, I've got multiple places that I'm building up. I've got a lot going on, a lot to manage, a lot to think about, and I have a lot of wealth that I can actually use to develop an army and start, conquest around in different areas and defending myself and all this stuff. And it's just really, really feels cool. And the sense of uniqueness and individuality is there with this game because you immediately know this is Manor Lords. Like, there isn't a builder that looks like this, that handles cities and houses like this in a medieval setting. So it definitely has a great sense of style. So given everything that I've said, how would I grade Manor Lords here in early access? Well, always what I like to do in these reviews is provide a baseline, which is the Steam reviews and the Metacritic scores, so that we can kind of compare and have a foundation that I can, use to measure my own score. On Steam, this game currently has just about 36,000 very positive reviews. So that's very strong. And then on Metacritic, it's a little trickier because, it's early access. However, lots of publishing outlets have posted reviews of the game in early access, and they're favorable. Most of them that do post reviews for early access were giving it about an 8 out of 10, like an 80. And I'm about right there with those reviews. My current grade for Manor Lords, given the state of the game, is a B+. I think that this game shows tremendous promise, and I'm really excited to see how it develops and unfolds, but there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done. I still love playing it. I still think it's awesome, but after you get past the initial wave, it kind of feels like there's some things that are missing. Then, once you get another settlement, it really starts getting interesting. However, there are just some quality of life and some systems that you need to be established to help make everything become clear and definable, because sometimes you could be going along and everything just seems fine, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, I've run out of resources. Like, I've completely put myself behind it where I can't do this, and it costs way too much money to import what I need. So you have to be careful about that as you play, and that's fine. I mean, that's just part of the learning process, but it's not all explained necessarily as well as it could be. So for me, obviously, I feel like a lot of my nitpicking are just going to be things that are ironed out as the game gets more development, and that's what you hope for. I'm very, very optimistic about this game, and I still enjoy playing it, but there's work that needs to be done, so my current grade is a B+ for Manor Lords. And I'd love to know what you think about that review. Do you think it's too kind, too harsh? Where are you at with this game? Have you played it yet, or are you thinking about playing it? Are you interested in this game? Do you think that it's too much hype, or do you think that it's not enough hype? Like, what are your thoughts about the game as it exists right now? So at this portion of the review, the next thing I like to pivot to is my recommendation of whether or not I think you should buy and play Manor Lords. And it is, if I were to compare Manor Lords, it feels like a builder in the vein of a city's skylines with the zoning, and also, perhaps you could think about some Anno-related stuff. However, the logistics don't lend itself to a game like that just yet, but I think that this game could just stand apart as an interesting mix of, large-scale battles like you get in Mount and Blade in this medieval setting, also with a builder element that is really, really fun and satisfying. It just has to kind of all take time to come together. So if you like this era, this time period, this medieval setting, if you like builders and you don't mind, having some combat in the game, then this, I think, is definitely a game for you. As far as difficulty goes, I don't think that the game starts out super difficult, like everything makes sense, but it's one of those games, just like any builder, that can punish you for expanding too quickly and not having enough resources to sustain yourself. And right now, there are not enough measures put in place to really stop you from boxing yourself in, except for when you run out of timber and stuff like that. But I think that will just come as the tutorials and the in-game help just emerges. So I don't think it's overwhelmingly the most difficult game. I was able to pull out some nosedives into my games that I got into, but I think it needs more explanation so that the difficulty is not really a result of just not knowing what to do, but a result of, the AI or not optimizing your strategies and things like that. So it's balanced reasonably, but that's going to all change, and I don't think it's overwhelmingly difficult, but there are some things that I would like just more explanation of. So what about the value of Manor Lords? It's currently $40 right now, 40 American dollars on Steam, and I think that's a pretty reasonable value. It is a lot for an early access game, but this is obviously, given its visuals and everything, you're talking about a game that's very far along and polished and looks amazing, so you can understand that price tag. It's still not $70 like a full price game, and I've got enough value in it where I think that's reasonable, but there's a lot of early access games that are more like $30. $40 is not out of this world, but I think if you like builders, you could sink enough time to make this a justifiable purchase. It's also just free to try on Xbox PC Game Pass if you wanted to do it that way, to see if this was something that you would be interested in. And I'm sure as updates and things come out, it'll go on sale as well. Now, what about replayability? I actually think it has a pretty good amount of replayability because, you might play and you might crash and burn, and then you can start again with more knowledge and in a different region that has maybe different fertility and some other things going on to make this more interesting. So as the game gets updates, gets balances, gets more content, I think the replayability will increase, and especially as they add more scenarios and maybe a campaign or something like that. So overall, do I recommend that you should try and play Manor Lords? Yeah, I think this is a pretty safe recommendation. I think that most people who like builders who boot this up will find that it's intuitive and they enjoy it. However, if you're a person that doesn't like to get anything in early access, I totally understand that argument, and maybe you check it out on Game Pass instead. But for my money, I think that there's enough here to justify purchasing it especially if it's in your wheelhouse. If you like this time period, if you like builders and you like the idea of some combat and some decision making, I think it's worth checking out even at this early access stage. So that's my review of Manor Lords. I think it's a really fun game, and I'm excited to see what happens as it continues to develop. And I think with all of the response that they will do a good job of finishing this game and fleshing it out. It's just not going to be done in like a month or so. This is going to take some time because it's such a grand scale, but that's cool, and I'm excited. So please let me know what you think in the comments below of my score, my review. Is this fair, unfair? Where are you at with Manor Lords in early access? I'd love to read those and figure out, what everybody is feeling about this game. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this to be useful. Take care.